This one open.
We're
Oh,
live.
hey, we are we are live. I was not ready for that. What's happening, wrestling fans? What's happening, Kevin? We are live. It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show.
Promptly at 8:05. TBS NWA era rules for the Two Bros Wrestling Show tonight.
Old
A
school
bit of
throwback.
a technical snafu.
Yep,
So thanks
my bad.
thanks for hanging with us.
Blame no one on me. Sorry about that, folks. We are
Not
connected
a
and
problem.
rocking and rolling now.
We hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We've rolled into December, which is crazy to think about.
It is.
Which means there's only a couple of episodes of the Two Bros Wrestling Show left for 2024. So
Yes.
sad. But not sad is the fact that we have a action-packed show tonight talking about Survivor Series in our main event. But before we do that,
You're good. News time. You're good.
let's talk first and hit that opening bell, starting with the story that
Let's
we
do it.
first brought to you last week. And that's AEW making adjustments to its set and lighting rig in order to fit in smaller venues. So this past
Hoorah.
week, we got Tony Khan actually speaking about it for the first time, and he made it clear that he was excited about the smaller venues and that his main goal was for AEW to be featured in strong markets with high energy crowds. And I know I saw you smirking. I thought the same thing. I'm like, what else are you going to say? But I honestly, I mean, with Tony and his mark, the mark that he is, I honestly don't see it as just spin. I mean, partially sure. You're
Mhm.
putting on a brave face in a not ideal
Sure.
situation. But more than that, I mean, it truly is just a smart business decision to
Mhm.
not show a bunch of empty seats. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
looks bad.
Tony would rather have all in, the UK 80,000 on a nightly basis, but that's not
Mhm.
practical. So what is practical is it's much better to take this approach by taking a step back and having a high energy crowd in a right sized building as opposed to a dead crowd with 30-40% empty seats. So I actually think that he might be serious in saying that it's going to be an improvement to the product. We'll just see how it plays.
Absolutely. Charleston and Huntington, both excellent venues for Tony Khan. If you're watching
Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah. I mean, last time Doug and I were last time we saw them in Charleston, it was a lot emptier than any other shows we'd ever seen. Maybe Huntington in the same market would be that right size building where you can have a high energy crowd without the empty seats and space.
Yep. So enough.
So let's stick with AEW for this next story as well. Bryan Danielson has been noticeably silent since his match at in Tacoma, where he dropped to the world title. But that ended this past week when he appeared on his wife Bree's
What?
podcast to discuss his health and wrestling future. He was very quick to note that he intentionally never used the term retirement when playing things out the last few months. It was pretty obvious to those, if you were paying attention and watching, that he always said it was the end of his full-time wrestling career, which is very
Mm-hmm.
different than retirement. He said this was just to be careful because he knew that he didn't want to promise anything and that people in wrestling never truly retire. He also did say that the only time that he talked to retirement was when there was retirement that was forced upon him in WWE when they would not
Fair.
clear him to wrestle. So he said that he's serious about not working a full-time schedule again, but made it clear he may not be able to ever even have those one-offs because all the concerns surrounding his long-term health. He said right now he doesn't know what is going to happen with his neck and that he is in need of surgery. And he described it, and this doesn't sound great, but he described it by saying, quote, "It honestly feels like I have a bobblehead." That doesn't sound promising that at the very least we'll be seeing Bryan Danielson anytime soon.
No. No.
Nor should we. If the dude has a bobblehead, I mean,
Right.
you give
Let's
it
let's
enough.
let's get that stabilized.
Let's get it stabilized. Another follow-up story from last week when we mentioned that the WWE network is coming to an end for the international audience. This week, we have had the news that WWE is making the network's content free for subscribers in the UK and Ireland from now until the network sunsets on January 1st. So if you live in those countries, your monthly auto renewal will not happen this month. So merry early Christmas. Your network's coming to an end, but at least you don't have to worry about that last month and one more charge on your credit card.
Papa Khan coming through for Christmas, and that would be Nick, not Tony, in this case.
Oh man, the former Xia Li. Let's talk about I say former because yes, she was Xia Li when she was released earlier this year by WWE, but she does have a new home. Li Ying Li, which is her real name and what she is going to be going by, has been signed by TNA. Lee had wrestled a few matches for TNA in September, but is now officially a member of the roster.
Nice.
Congratulations.
And we'll soon be back on NXT as they continue to poach.
Wouldn't that be funny? I mean, to be released by WWE and then end up back through the relationship with TNA. Speaking of TNA, the promotion also has announced that Matt and Jeff Hardy have signed new deals. The Hardys re-upped with TNA. It's reportedly for 1 year, and it allows the legendary tag team to work independent dates and shows as they see fit around their Impact schedule.
All right.
So this next one kind of ties into our main event topic, Doug. Someone who wasn't on Survivor Series that we're getting ready to speak of, but Jade Cargill was written off TV, as you know, with a injury angle, and there have been questions, including us here on the show, to talk about, is it a work? Is she really injured? You talk about things that don't sound promising, like we were saying earlier with Bryan Danielson. The secret nature of this doesn't sound promising to me, but Dave Meltzer has reported that WWE is being unusually very secretive concerning the possible severity of what appears to be a real injury for Jade Cargill. He also reported that WWE is preparing to strip the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships from Cargill and Belair due to the injury. These titles, they got to be cursed or something, considering the same thing happened with Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. The same thing happened with Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville. And let's not also forget that, you know, it was an injury, but Naomi and Sasha Banks very famously legit walked out on the company. So, you know, these tag titles haven't been around very long, and man, that is a curse.
And this is so bizarre in the case of Jade Cargill, because we've had so much. Is she? Isn't she? Is it legit? Then they go through a long list of like multiple injuries that she has. What are there, like 5 at one point? And then I think it was Meltzer reported via I think it was Wrestle Talk I was watching earlier this morning, where they were talking about all these injuries. You know, there's 3 different stories floating around that she's injured. It's a work. She's very injured, but nobody knows the actual severity, or even her close personal friends backstage have no idea what's actually wrong with her. So many stories floating around this, is trying to figure out if it's a work, it's a shoot, and either way, you know, last I heard on news programs today is that she's going to be out for at least 3 months because of whatever this is.
Whatever it is, which means that the tag titles will be up in a tournament again, or I mean, who knows? Maybe Bianca gets to pick a new partner the same way that Chelsea Green picked Piper Niven when Sonya went down. But it is really strange when you look at the history of this championship, just how often this happens. So perhaps whoever is next in line, maybe turn down the opportunity to be champ. Say,
oh, thank you.
Thank you, but no thank you. But whatever the situation is, our best wishes and a quick recovery to Jade
whatever
Cargill.
it is. Absolutely.
Whatever is going on. Maybe more will be revealed in the coming weeks, especially if they do strip the titles as soon as maybe tomorrow night or pre-Saturday night's main event. We will see. And with that,
speaking of main events,
we'll move on to the main event. And before we even get started, I have to say a correction is in order, because I did realize from last week's episode, when talking about the the match that we're going to begin with here, the opening match, which we did correctly predict as the opening match. I do believe that I talked about who would take the pin first and describe the match as if it was Elimination Chamber as
I
opposed
even going
opposed
through
to
the
War
match
Games.
up and up until like right before the big finish, I was like, wait a minute, this is an elimination. It's a one and done. Because
And you know,
I too thought it was elimination.
War Games has only been. I think it was Dusty Rhodes who invented it back in the WCW days. So we probably should have known better. But sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the gimmick matches and stipulations. But I am, maybe it's my journalistic integrity that requires me to go. Apologies for the incorrect information, but now we're going to be back on track, though, talking about not incorrect, but all the correct information we provided, which was pretty good in the terms of our predictions.
Hmm.
But before we get into winners and losers and a review of every match, let's talk non-spoilers. If you're tuning in and you haven't yet watched the show and you just want to know whether or not you should watch the show, to me, this was one where if you want to save yourself some time, it gets better as it goes along.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I think that you could probably cut out the first hour and a half. Not saying you should if you have the time and you're a completist, check it all out. There's there's some redeemable things we'll talk about, but nothing consequential happens till at least halfway through. And then after that, it got pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So was that thumbs slightly up in the middle of the slightly up?
Yeah, we're kind of. Let me align with my camera here. Oh, I don't know. Yes, sort of, kind of. I mean, it's. I would say you used the phrase before. It's an inoffensive PLE, but there are missable moments for sure.
And in some ways, didn't we kind of call it last week when just talking about the concept of these spectacle matches that are war games can be highly entertaining. But at the end of the day, whether it's war games or even if you want to roll the clock back further to old school Survivor Series, there's just never in the history of this event been terribly high stakes. And I would say to that end, this was a typical Survivor Series from that perspective of, yep, that's Survivor Series, some pretty good action, but really at the end of the day, not a lot of consequence.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So with that said,
yeah,
if you want to dive into everything and find out which matches we're particularly talking about, because there were some good ones on this one. Now we're going to get into the spoiler territory, Doug. If you're ready to
make it happen,
if you're ready for the War Games to begin.
War Games. There we go.
We called it correctly when it was the fact that we would begin and end with War Games matches, and we were also correct in the matches, the order in which those happened, the female match being first, the male match going on last. So to start with, we have Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi Sky, Bayley versus Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. Doug, our winners in this one, I don't think we necessarily called everything with this one right.
Right.
We got the winners right. We thought that there could possibly be some consequence if you let Tiffy do her thing, but didn't happen there.
Didn't happen. I mean, we got the guaranteed tease of Tiffy time, and I was
concerned.
Yeah. I was concerned when it didn't come out with her, and I was like, "What? Where's the briefcase? Where's that bedazzled the box?" But it did make an appearance.
Reveal.
So, yes.
We start off with Nia and Bayley, and it wasn't long before the mic caught those two at the beginning with Bayley. You knew where I was going with that. And man, Bayley hollers elbow, Nia miraculously counters with an elbow. This, to me, in some ways was a bit of foreshadowing for the rest of the match, which at times was clunky and kind of went off the rails.
Very clunky. And these girls are absolutely professionals, but I think Nia is so sloppy and just
that's
everybody else pulled their own weight. But I mean, even like I watched it with my brother-in-law, and at one point I'm telling him, okay, Candace can actually wrestle. As soon as I say that, I don't even remember what it was, but Candace did something. I'm like, no, really, she can wrestle. She just missed a spot.
So
She's not like
spots get
Nia.
missed. Happen, like missed spots happen quite often in these kind of environments when you have so many moving parts. They're always a
Hmm.
little clunky. But
Sure.
to your point, Nia is just next level
Mm.
clunky. Like she was not in any sort of complicated spot with multiple people involved. She was just
No.
trying to do simple chair shots. And it's like, what is she
Yes.
doing? Like she's
Yes.
barely tapping them and then throws the chair down. Like, how can you mess up something as easy as a chair shot to the back?
Yeah.
But she
And
did.
just, I mean, the other nine girls in this match really pulled their own weight. You're right. In a match like this with so many moving parts, things are going to get missed. Somebody's going to slip, but
Yeah.
consistently, Nia is just not good and made the
Okay.
entire and brought the entire thing down.
Yeah. I will say that, well, I'll go through some highlights and lowlights
Sure.
because, Naomi ends up being the third person in the ring to give the faces the first advantage of the War Games match. And then there were these, I don't know, to me, the oddest choice of the match was the use of the toilet seat. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that was supposed to be funny or surprising, or I just found it odd. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just an odd choice.
Hmm.
Liv Morgan was last in the ring to officially start War Games, which that made sense.
Right.
Tiffany Stratton and EO, I think, had the spot of the match, in my opinion, when they both took to the top of the cage
Yes.
and went diving off simultaneously. Of course, EO with the callback with the trash can.
Trash can. And how about that beautiful swanton by Tiffy from up top? I mean, it was.
Let's talk Tiffy because that is to me the hinge of this match was, and we
Hmm.
last week, will she, won't she? It's the cash in that never ended up happening, but there was the drama of the
Got the
tease, like
tease.
the
Hmm.
reveal. But now the drama is, I guess, who was she planning on using it on? Because it was not clear, even though she didn't end up using that stipulation,
Hmm.
who she was going to target and use that against.
Right. And, because again, both of us, I think, really were locked into it. This is an elimination situation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Cole calls it out. Wait a minute. If she cashes in right now, how does this work? Because she would essentially
In the
pin
match.
someone and end the match, but she would pin someone on her own team. So, but who wins and how would that even work? So I was,
I
oh
guess
well.
maybe for that reason might be why they didn't choose to have a cash in, because it would have maybe taken a somewhat convoluted concept and make it
Yeah.
even more convoluted by a non-finish, odd finish, what the heck finish. But I
Right.
did like the tease of it. And I did like
Hmm.
the, now Nia's going to question, hey, were you going to use it on me? And of course, Tiffy's going to be, no, I was planning on using it on Liv. She didn't tip her hand, which I think is
Mm-mm.
a great um, plot point moving forward. But the pin
Yep.
itself came with a big riptide spot off
Big
the
riptide.
ropes, and it looked great through a table. Rhea picking up the pin on Liv. And so now that we know how it all plays out, we said that a lot of these war game matches are as much about the storylines that develop and spin out of this. So let's look at this finish. Obviously, the finish sets up multiple things. Sees the champ, who is the one that gets pinned, is
Hmm.
now like vulnerable to the former champ, which people think anyway that it's only a matter of time, right, before Rhea gets her hands on
Absolutely.
Liv.
Yeah.
Pretty much guarantees, though, with Rhea. I mean, next up is storyline wise, Io Sky is in line for a championship match. But I
Hmm.
think that pinfall pretty well solidifies that the reign of Liv Morgan isn't ending until Rhea Ripley is involved.
Right. Yeah. And it really doesn't. Here's the problem I had with the War Games match, and not to get too ahead, but a lot of things weren't really settled. They maybe were extended. You know, something as violent as War Games should bring things to an end. But all this did, like you said, it set up a Rhea Liv on down the line.
And it also set up a eventual Tiffany Stratton
Yes.
Nia break, which is also something that has been happening for a while. So it really didn't do anything other than move the needle a little farther, but we saw
Mm-hmm.
that one's coming. Nothing, though, for Bianca as it relates to what's next for her, or her partner Jade being unable to appear. That ended up
Mm-hmm.
not being a storyline for the match,
Yeah.
which in some ways could also be telling as
Mm-hmm.
them not knowing quite yet the severity of the injury or what they're going to do. The fact that did not play or factor into any of this at all.
And I'm confused about Rhea's injury too. Is that real or is it shoot? Because first off, kudos to whoever the costume designer is, and maybe she just grabbed something on the way out the door from home and said, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to wear this tonight," and took it with her because it was very House of Blackish, that whole headpiece she had on.
I am sure Buddy was maybe she just raided her, her significant other's closet.
Right? Yeah, just grab something on the way out the door. You know, you wearing
Oh,
this tonight? Okay, I'm going to take it.
so moving to the next match, which is one we didn't predict because
Oh,
it
yeah.
was it was an added on match because one thing Shinsuke Nakamura hasn't been back very long, so it was not
Hmm.
a long build to it. And this was the match where the United States champion LA Knight defended that against a returning Shinsuke Nakamura. Speaking of the House of Black, Nakamura now looks like he is out of the House of Black with his
Yes.
new darker motif he has going on. It's unfair, to be honest, to both of these men just because of the placement. It wouldn't matter what you put in this
Hmm.
spot. It's going to be the come down match after you have a bunch of plunder and double cages,
Right.
10 women, spot heavy, and then you just like reduce it to one ring and two guys wrestling a standard match. But they did in the little amount of time. I mean, the crowd got into it, I think, as much as anything, because the crowd is kind of like into both of these guys, regardless of the
Yes.
fact that Nakamura is a heel. The fans have always loved Nakamura. LA Knight, obviously, very over. I
Hmm.
think it was that belly to back suplex, though, that Nakamura did from the top rope that seemed to kind of finally wake the crowd back up and get them back into
Yes.
it.
Yes. And it's weird because Nakamura's, I don't know, I think ever since he came up to the main roster, he's just kind of drifted along anyway. We've talked about this before. And I don't want to say I didn't expect much out of this, but I really didn't expect much out of this. It was definitely and I hate to say it, a cool down match with two very
Yeah.
great performers, but
And they
and
only
the
had 9
ending,
minutes, too.
right, and the ending did not see that coming, did not expect
Well,
that.
this was an okay match. The Kinshasa by Shinsuke ended Knight's title run with a clean
Mhm.
pin. As I
Clean,
said,
yeah.
okay match. Nothing terrible about it.
Hmm.
Nothing over the top good
Right.
about it either. But I think this was probably the most surprising outcome of the night.
Yes.
Even if you and I had predicted this match, I don't think either of us would have predicted it this way. LA Knight just won that title at SummerSlam. Uh,
Right.
over Logan Paul, and it's not like he isn't moving merch or is that over. So I see something like this and I go, huh, is LA Knight in trouble backstage?
Because I'm not. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is what's going on? Is Triple H finally going to rehab like Shinsuke at the cost of LA Knight here? Is that? I
I,
mean,
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm all for like okay, I like the look, the change in the music, the new look. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe let's give Shinsuke a little something to work with. Fantastic. It is surprising though if it comes, as you say, at the expense of LA Knight, because
Right.
it's very clear coming out of this that Nakamura is going to maybe be featured in a way that he hasn't in some time, but it's less clear as where LA Knight goes from here after finally rising to a title in WWE,
Hmm.
only to turn around and lose it within a couple of months.
Yeah. I don't know. I did not
That
expect
part's
that.
odd. That's part
It,
of
it,
is odd.
yeah.
This next match, Doug, is one that we halfway predicted as being added to the card. We didn't
Yep.
anticipate it as the triple threat, which does add an element to it that we'll get into when we go through this match. But we have up next your Intercontinental Championship with your champion Braun Breaker defending against Sheamus, who's chasing that title after 15 plus years of not having that title and having it elude him. And then the wild card in the situation was Ludwig Kaiser being thrown into the mix.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, winners and losers, we'll just say Braun Breaker, still your champion. But to me, the story of this match was just that. Breaker wrestled like a beast in this. A beast.
Come on, old man. Come on, old man.
Snug suplexes. Propelling himself like a missile in that one spot on the outside. Yes. Where did he come from? It's just like over the cannon.
He was shot out of a cannon.
He propels himself from the ring and through both of his opponents into the announce table. By the time we got to that beautiful Frankensteiner, the crowd who had been chanting for Sheamus because they wanted to see that,
right.
But the crowd was barking and was all Braun.
Yeah. Yes.
Having been with Sheamus earlier because of the work of Braun Breaker. There was that, speaking of Sheamus, there was that nice near fall where Sheamus moved. Braun hits the chair that was propped up in the corner. Sheamus gets the bro kick. I thought that actually could be the finish. It was believable.
I really thought several times, and I really was thinking in my mind, okay, Breaker's actually going to drop the belt. They're going to give it to Sheamus, so he completes his set. He's the belt collector. This is the title he's never had. Yeah. And then they move Breaker on out of the mid card, and let's go ahead and insert him into a main event slot going into 25, right? Because there were times where I legitimately thought this is the finish. Sheamus has got this. No, no.
Well, that near fall that I was saying was so believable there. It wasn't that Braun kicked out; it was Ludwig Kaiser broke up the pin. Which, at that point, I'm like, and that is why Ludwig Kaiser was added to this to mostly play the role of spoiler throughout the rest of it. But because of that, I also thought he would be the one to take the pin, and they would end up. So this is really a night of surprising who takes the pin. In the first match, I was surprised the champ took the pin. Obviously, it was a surprise when Shinsuke got the victory. And in this one, I was surprised that Ludwig didn't get the pin and that Sheamus takes the pin after what I must say. There were two great spears by Braun Breaker to both of his opponents. Yes. Particularly that one to Ludwig, which was, like you say, cannon, shot out of a cannon, right?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't think the kid was out of steam. I don't think the kid runs out of gas. So the Kaiser spear, amazing. In comparison, let me say it this way: in comparison, the spear that Sheamus took was a much more kinder, gentler spear.
Oh yeah, I know. I thought Kaiser had been split in two.
I know.
But again, it's Braun getting the pin on Sheamus. So surprising that happened, but great triple threat. This was when things to me really began to pick up for this PLE was this match right here. I expect I expected anyway, a future Sheamus Braun one-on-one, but not sure now that Sheamus got a pretty clean pin on him that's where it goes. Obviously, this would probably be until his retirement part of the Sheamus story. It might not be Braun, but somewhere down the line, Sheamus is going to, this will be his white whale until he gets this IC title, whoever's the champion, which is great because for someone like Sheamus, who, as we mentioned last week, I think can be a little overlooked and a little underrated, this really gives him something that is a storyline driven for WrestleManias and big events here on out. Is can he finally win that Intercontinental title? Something to sink his teeth into.
Yeah.
Up next, Doug, we have the World Heavyweight Championship match with your champion, still champion, as he came out victorious, Gunther against Damian Priest. I don't know if you noticed this, but to me, there was a tepid reaction for Priest during the ring intros. and a
Yep.
fairly strong reaction for Gunther, considering he's a heel. Now, is this
Yes.
Canadian bizarro world since this was Vancouver, or is there something else brewing here as far as the fans' reception of these two?
It's interesting because working itself into the finish, Gunther goes with the, this is not how I wanted this to finish, but get out of here.
Yeah,
I'll do
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
myself. Because we do have interference from just Finn, not the rest of Judgment Day, but just Finn interferes and goes after Priest, and Gunther will still, pin Priest, but he goes out and takes care of business with Finn real quick too.
Which could again back to those intros and the fan reaction.
Hmm.
This could be slowly moving both of them to different spots on the heel face spectrum,
Yes,
as it were.
yes.
Um, the early story in this one was Priest's arm and shoulder as a target. They did a great job. These two have good chemistry together. They did a great job of that whole technical master that is Gunther against the street fighter that is Damian Priest.
Hmm.
Two styles that maybe shouldn't work as well together as they do. Because I love the spot like where Gunther chopped Priest at the same time Priest was hitting a kick, and somehow both
Hmm.
men connected and both men
Yes.
were down and out. I thought that was fantastic. That Razor's Edge was a believable false finish
Yes.
for Priest. We mentioned last week that we wouldn't be surprised if they took the title and put it back on Priest. That is not the way they went. As you mentioned, the winner was Gunther after
Right.
Finn Balor interfered, just as he did at SummerSlam. So, except this time, as you noted, Gunther made it clear he did not want the interference, even as he took advantage of it and
Hmm.
finished off Priest. Good match here in my mind.
Good match. Yeah, absolutely.
I was a little worried. I know last week we were kind of not wishy-washy on Gunther, the wrestler, but wishy-washy on the way that his reign was going after he lost the Cody Rhodes.
Hmm.
That invincible Gunther aura seemed to be punctured a
Yep.
little bit. I think this puts him back on track, but I also think, I think it makes him a little bit of a tweener, more with the reaction he had to Balor interfering.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was thinking that the darling of this match would be Priest because I think he's more the everyman, whereas Gunther is like the smart mark, wrestler's wrestler. But
Yeah.
that Canadian crowd was more behind Gunther, and then that at least no, you stay out of my business, spear uh that Finn took on the outside. Are we at least moving Gunther to more of a tweener? What's going on here? I know WWE's big on there are no good guys, there are no bad guys anymore, but that's a fundamental of wrestling. There have to be the heels and the faces, and I don't think that's necessarily the case, even though they may say that from time to time.
There may be a bit of that Canadian factor that has always been as far as who they cheer and who they boo. I will say that, having been fortunate enough to be at SummerSlam, there were a decent number of Gunther fans in that crowd as well. But definitely more so here. So maybe it's the difference in the United States and Canada, or maybe it's just slowly moving that direction. This is just anecdotally, but like my niece who is in high school
Right?
doesn't watch wrestling. She has a friend who's big into wrestling, and oh, my uncle loves that. Like,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, who's his favorite wrestler? And she texts him and asks him. It comes back Gunther. This is like a 16,
Oh,
17-year-old
okay.
kid.
Okay.
Is Gunther catching on with the younger smart marks who really love your Brian
Yeah,
Danielsons because the dude
right.
can wrestle? Maybe there's an appreciation for the fact that, okay, this dude can wrestle. I could see him as a tweener, as not a nefarious
Mm,
heel, just as a guy who goes about and takes care of business.
You know, I'm thinking back, to what was it the go home Raw where he tells Kaiser, no, you stay out of this. I got this.
I got
You go out
this.
and make a name for yourself. So maybe he is
Yeah.
moving, breaking up Imperium and doing his own thing and establishing himself as maybe the tweener. Maybe we're going to see a reign of the tweeners.
And we might actually then have some idea if that's the direction they're going. If what happens at the end of that match maybe sets up a Balor Gunther match down the road.
Yeah.
It definitely seems though like after 2 wins for Gunther against Priest is that Priest is probably not the guy for a while when it comes to this championship. And I imagine that Priest, I know it feels like the Judgment Day business should be finished, but maybe there's something left there. Obviously, it's not finished for Finn Balor. So I imagine we have at least one more round of that in Priest's future as far as what's next for him.
Yeah, I think so, because I think they going out of their way to use that to protect him at the end of this match, because he has the legitimate reason for, the interference, not necessarily a double team, but outside interference, to bring this match to an end. Because of course, being the babyface in the match, he did not tap out. He was lost consciousness to
very important
to lose the match. So after after being assaulted by Finn on the outside, and so he has his out. He's protected. Gunther establishing a different type of character. I think we're both pretty solid on. This is a direction that maybe Gunther's going now, and I hope the kids, the smart marks out there are catching on.
It was an entertaining match. It wasn't a show stealer per se, but it was very, very good, and leading us into our main event, which is 50 minutes of chaos. But you have the old school bloodline, old school bloodline and friends, I should say.
And a mercenary? I mean,
it's Roman Reigns, the Usos, Sami Zayn, and CM Punk. Then you have the new bloodline plus an Aussie with Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Bronson Reed.
The South Pacific was well represented.
Well, that's right. Starting off this contest with Tama Tonga and Jey Uso, the heels, unlike the women's match, the heels are the ones that won the advantage throughout this one, and that comes into play with the first advantage was when Bronson Reed comes in and you start that with a 2-on-1. I liked when Solo stopped Tonga Loa and sent in Jacob Fatu instead, which was just great. And honestly, you should always stop Tongaloa and send in Jacob Fatu.
If you have the option of stopping Tongaloa and sending in Jacob, absolutely every time.
Sorry, Tongaloa, but
you're not in Gorillas of Destiny anymore, dude. I don't know what's going on, but
Roman Reigns would then follow suit, do the exact same thing, which was great when he stopped CM Punk from entering when it was Punk's turn to go in. Of course, later Punk would charge his way past Roman Reigns and out of the cage, furthering the tension, which really, that was the first portion of this match, was the tension and perceived tension and back issues playing out between CM Punk and Roman Reigns. Which I was fine with, expected it, and it maybe plays into where some, sets up some things for the future. Again, fine with that.
Yeah,
Fatu, man, delivering that beautiful pop-up Samoan drop on Punk, that was a thing of beauty. Everything that man does really is a thing of beauty.
In the squared circle, I don't think there's anything that man can do wrong. I mean, even when it's a slight botch, he just rolls with it, sells it, once again,
and question it.
Yes, once again, I'm like, is he legitimately hurt?
Yeah.
What just happened? What's going on?
Yeah, he may have He looked like he legit had a knee give out on that springboard moonsault, but he's so good at selling. And had us fooled before that he had a legit injury, which he did, but maybe not as bad as we thought.
Right.
In this one, everything I have read afterwards is that it's very likely he got hurt, but not enough to not finish. And he made the decision on the spot to sell the heck out of it.
Just sell it. And
the dude is amazing. He is absolutely one of the MVPs for 2024. And was an MVP in this match. Again, that beautiful pop-up Samoan drop, amongst other things, the split-legged moonsault, the springboard moonsault. I mean, all of it. We had the moment where Solo locked the door to keep Roman, the final man, from entering. But it was almost comical the way that after going through all that, how easy it was for Roman to scale a relatively short cage. But it really was just an opportunity to get the big man who never goes up top to do what
Uh-huh.
was, I have to admit, a fairly impressive for his size
Yes.
crossbody on the throng below.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that. I'm like, wait a minute. He's done that Undertaker run and jump out of the ring, but I've not. I don't think I've seen him take flight from the top of a cage before.
No, no, and it, I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for him, but he looked good doing
Right?
it.
Yeah.
Uh, we did get Reigns spearing Punk accidentally and other,
Whoops.
sort of miscommunications. But in the end, what we have is Punk saving Reigns from
Mm-hmm.
a big tsunami from Bronson Reed from the top of the cage. And that was the turning point, really, as far as, okay, now there's a truce between the two. And that lasted through the end of the match and even played out after the faces get
Mm-hmm.
the victory when, Roman Reigns at one point helped CM Punk up, and
Yep.
so yeah, that stopped being the whole "will they explode" kind of thing after that moment. And before I leave, though, that tsunami, that was, to me, that was the spot of the match, and
Yeah.
maybe the night, just due to the risk involved. Top of the cage, a man of Bronson Reed's size coming off from the
Mm-hmm.
top through a table. That was quite a visual, wasn't it?
It was quite. It looked. Just going back to Tiffany Stratton's Swanton from earlier, it just looked so good, especially when from different angles when they show like an above angle where Punk grabs Reigns as Bronson, and he does that when he does that splash, and it just kind of looks funny. It's like the big man's trying to fly because he like regrets what he's doing all of a sudden.
Yeah, there's no one there,
But
but it's a long way to the bottom of the pool that
yeah.
doesn't have
So
water.
he's
You've already
really
jumped.
doing doing his like flapping his wings, coming off of there. But the table just explodes, and
Yeah, it was
unfortunately, it
great, man.
sounds like he
It
may
might have
have
hurt. Yeah.
to both ankles. It sounds like so he may not be on TV for a few weeks, but so and Jay Uso apparently also suffered an injury with a broken toe at some point. I think during one of those Uso splashes where they did the stereo splash, taking me back to the first time when they first debuted in WWE. Been a long time since we've seen that double splash.
The double splash looked great. Let's not also, I know all the focus is on the big splash that Bronson did from the top, but also coming from the very, very top was Jimmy, who had an impressive Uso splash through a table on with Fatu Jacob on it. Then the finisher ends up being, all the heels are down, and so we have a face. I don't know. I guess a finisher party, we'll call it, because not
Yeah,
everyone was doing super. It was everyone's hitting their finisher on poor Solo, left alone, and that was the that's how we
that
end it.
was and that was the
Roman
one,
Reigns gets
two,
the pin.
three. Yeah.
To me, this is like earlier what we were saying with Sheamus taking that pin
Mm-hmm.
in the triple threat. I'm just a bit surprised here that it was Reigns getting the visual pin on Solo when they could have had any number of combinations that would have had the same result without giving away that actual pinfall. Um,
So
it makes me wonder where this leaves the Reigns and Solo like feud as to tribal chief, since we've already seen. To me, in this one, the faces didn't need it as bad as the heels needed it. The new bloodline needs more legitimacy than the old school bloodline does. And so this
agreed.
kind of defines down Solo as, in my opinion, as well, he's no real threat to Roman. So it's just a matter of time before this happens, instead of, building it as can Roman Reigns overcome this. Now it just seems like these new kids are nowhere outside of Jacob Fatu. These new kids are nowhere near the other guys in the old school bloodline.
And that's just it, because I was trying to explain to my brother-in-law. It's like, no, okay, these two guys were actually good in New Japan. They were Guerrilla of Destiny. They're old school Bullet Club members, but they're kind of like the Stooges from back in the like '90s that
Yeah.
ran around with McMahon because they're the bumbling fools. You know,
Yeah.
Tama Tonga deserves better, but yeah, that's the role he's playing right now. And like you say, other than Jacob. where's the real threat? Unless they're trying to weigh it as a okay, Solo has a win over Roman. Roman has a win over Solo. The Ulafala is was nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Nothing, none of that was settled. At this, and Michael Cole goes out of his way to mention that the Ulafala still remains with Solo. So really, this didn't settle anything either. It broke a few people.
And maybe that's if you're going to nitpick on what was a very action-packed good main event is, as we
Yeah,
say
yeah.
before, Survivor Series tends to not have a ton of consequences. Where are the
Hmm.
consequences in this? Nothing is settled as far as, okay, here's
Right.
the Civil War. Well, the OG bloodline comes out on top. To what end? The Ulafala is still with Solo. How does Solo recover from taking that pinfall when now most fans are going to go, it's just a matter of time. As soon as Roman gets him one-on-one, Solo's gotta, go down.
Hmm.
How do we build
Yeah.
Solo into a threat? Does he have to maybe hold off Reigns on at least one attempt at ending this feud before,
Look, uh,
eventually Roman's going to obviously come out on top?
they have established two people in the new bloodline as actual threats. We have one big boy Bronson. Is going probably going to be out of action for a while, and is he a part of the bloodline now, or is he just like their mercenary they brought in for their fifth man? Don't That was never really addressed, I don't think. And beyond that, the only threat if Bronson's out of bloodline or if he's just out for weeks at a time right now doesn't really matter because the only real threat is Jacob Fatu. But he loves Solo, loves that man.
Oh man, it cracks me up every time he randomly hollers out, "I love
I
you,
love you,
Solo."
Solo.
Also of note, no Rock. No
Yes.
Rock involvement, no Rock tease, no even
Hmm.
mention of the Rock in all of this. Obviously, they would have teased something if there's something imminent.
Yep.
Very likely it means that they're not sure when Rock factors back into this storyline.
Hmm.
And with that, that is the end of
Yes.
Survivor Series, a show that was big on action, maybe not big on consequences. We had one very surprising championship change, was it as far as championships changing hands. And maybe the most surprising thing was who all took pinfalls in these multi-person
Right.
matchups.
Yeah.
Some booking decisions that we'll see. Only
Hmm.
time will tell if they were the right ones. They were definitely surprising ones.
Yep. For sure.
With that, Doug, let's hit that big finish.
Let's do it.
Let's start with Botch of the Week.
Oh, this is real easy. Anything with Nia in it from last night. There you go. Anything she did in the ring last night. Come on.
That's what I have on my notes too, man. I mean, the opening match would have been far better without the many botches and missed spots by Jax. They've done a WWE has done a lot to improve the Nia Jax character in Nia Jax 2.0. I honestly think the Nia Jax character has been more entertaining than she was previously, but then she gets in the ring and it's still the same Nia Jax. She
Same.
has a
Yeah.
few new moves and things, but I think she's trying to improve to the point that it just actually makes for more botches than before because she's shooting above her abilities
Right.
in some ways. And she's
And
obviously
maybe,
not as talented as the other female workers. So to me, it's Tiffy time. Like it has to
oh,
be Tiffy time.
it is
So
absolutely Tiffy time. I mean, that girl, pure athlete. Where Naya
yeah.
is a big Samoan girl with a nice Samoan heritage, but I don't know. Maybe she was trying to be too cautious in the ring and just made her spots look really
Yeah,
bad because she was
really
being
did.
too cautious. But it was not good. It
Yeah.
was just not good.
Um, total agreement on that one. Performance of the week, Doug.
Man, this is hard. Because I always go to the pay per view or PLE when we do these. Uh, there were some really solid performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Braun Breaker though, man. The kid just showed what he's got, and working with Sheamus and having one person he could just completely bend in two and break in Kaiser. You know, it worked really well all together because you had the heel in Kaiser, you had the babyface in Sheamus who was working towards a goal, and you had the tweener, the champion. And WWE seems to like getting into that gray area right now, which is cool, but you need your good guys and your bad guys. This had a sampling of all three, but Breaker just was shining. Like you say, he just like shot out of a cannon, goes flying over the camera, taking people out. Beautiful spears, you
Yeah.
know, Frankensteiners, you know, the kid.
Yeah.
The kid is golden. I've said this since day one. Take that stupid Braun Breaker name from him, call him Bronson Steiner, and let the kid go. But name aside, I'm going Steiner or Reed or not Reed, Bronson Breaker, whoever he is, it's the Steiner kid.
Greg just gave his performance of the week to half the roster, I think.
Except Naya. No,
I'm going with Corey Graves. I'm giving Corey Graves my
Corey.
performance of the night for the
All right.
line that he delivered about Jacob Fatu during the main event, where he described Fatu as having all the gifts an athlete would want without the morals. Great line.
There was a great line from Cole. I think it was in the triple threat where somebody goes flying towards Cole and Cole and Graves have to move quickly and Cole's like, I'm getting too old for this.
Yeah, that was good too. Good job all right around by the announce team. We didn't call him out
Yes.
earlier. Let's call it. Definitely good night for the announce team.
Absolutely.
Match of the week, Doug.
Man. Again, this one's hard because I wrote
It is
down
hard.
multiple notes about this, and I'm just like this is very hard for me too. So I'm going to go with the men's war games just because of those beautiful spots, especially and this is why I get my bronze and my Bronsons all screwed up because in my list, Bronson Reed with that beautiful tsunami, which unfortunately sounds like it injured him, you know like you said, that might have been spot of the night, but so just so much advanced, and like every single bloodline match there's ever been, what happened in the ring was good, but not necessarily what drives the bloodline stories, because what's driving the bloodline story out of this beyond the Ula Fala and who is the tribal chief and who's going to unite this tribe. And does that, just side note, does that then mean that suddenly we're going to have like a faction of like 20 Samoans running around at some point if they're all united under like a single tribal chief? Just throwing that out there. And I actually lost my thought with that. Oh, I know what I was saying. It's what happens at the end beyond the Ulafala is what favor does Paul owe Punk now?
Yeah, that's right.
That's going to
a
roll
tease we didn't
into.
mention. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that is something to do with a match against Roman Reigns down the line. We'll see.
Yeah.
I can't argue with your choice because I have in my notes that I was tempted to give match of the week to the men's War Games match, but I'm going to go with what to me was the surprise show stealer, and that was that triple threat of Braun, Sheamus, and Ludwig. They put a lot into 15 minutes, and it was just riveting stuff with Sheamus still chasing that one belt that eludes him. Ludwig having a very strong showing as the wild card who is determined to break out of Gunther's shadow as he was instructed to do. And then the third man in that was Braun, as you mentioned in Performer of the Week. Braun just looking like the next big thing.
Yes.
I mean, he is the next big thing. I want to see 2 years from now, main event of WrestleMania, Braun Breaker versus Jacob Fatu. How about that? Like,
oh,
yes, I mean, seriously,
please.
there's such exciting young talent right now, just bubbling in that mid card, ready to evolve over the next year, two. And Braun showed that he's ready for his spotlight. This was a good match where honestly, all three people involved gained something, even though only one person got the victory. All three gained something in that match.
Absolutely.
And with that, it it is the end of the Two Bros Wrestling Show for this week. Before though we talk about next week, I want to remind viewers, in case you missed it, if you did not see it this past week, during the Thanksgiving holiday week, we dropped a bonus episode, a
Honest.
special standalone episode. It is available now on our Facebook and YouTube channels. It is a comprehensive day-by-day guide to pro wrestling programming, including all the changes and new streaming options in the wake of WWE and AEW's new broadcast rights deals. We also get into the third and fourth tier promotions, the indie promotions, everything you'd want to know about what's on when. It dropped this week. Check it out on all of our channels. If you have not yet done so, we would appreciate it.
Absolutely. And don't forget to like, share it, send it to all your friends who love wrestling, because there's a lot of information packed into that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wrestling coming in 2025. So
It was a labor of love putting that one together, and I was happy with the way it
sure it
turned out.
was.
So yeah, a lot of fun. And then I will close by saying join us next week for our live broadcast, Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook. This is when we're live. It is the last, I know, sad, the last Two Bros Wrestling Show of 2024. You will not want to miss it because it is our annual Christmas episode. We always make that the last episode of 2024. And this year, in the spirit of the holidays, you see the topic there is it time to forgive CM Punk? I have a feeling we might have some strong opinions out there, not just from you all, but from the panel, the two of us. Who knows? Let's see. Let's get together and talk about it next Sunday.
But until then, go watch some wrestling, everybody. Good night.